You will not believe this.
The first thing I noticed was the way the room kept moving while I stayed perfectly still. My hands were on my lap under the table, fingers locked so tightly my knuckles ached. Across from me, he slid his phone back into his jacket like it had burned him. He didn't look angry, that was the worst part. He looked relieved. "I don't think this is going to work," he said, polite enough to be cruel. The waiter arrived with our drinks at the exact wrong moment, 2 glasses landing softly like punctuation. I nodded like I was fine, like I wasn't shrinking inside my own skin, like the couple at the next table couldn't hear every word. I pushed my chair back, whispering, "Okay, no worries." I grabbed my coat, I grabbed my dignity, I grabbed whatever was left. And as I turned toward the door, a small voice near the bar said, "Dad?" I froze, because the man who answered wasn't my date. He stood up slowly, like he'd been watching a storm form for a while. He looked at me, really looked, and walked straight toward my table with a kind of calm that didn't belong in a place like this. He stopped 1 step away. Then he said, quietly, like it was the simplest thing in the world, "Be my wife." And that's when everything went quiet. The restaurant was warm, gold light, soft jazz, rain tapping the window like someone trying to get in. I told myself it was just dinner, 1 hour, a story I could shrug off later. Across from me, Ethan sat upright, jacket pressed, hands folded as if he'd arrived for an interview. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "So," he said, "what are you looking for?" "A connection," I said. "Someone kind." He nodded like he was checking a box. The questions kept coming. My job, my schedule, my goals. Kids, yes or no, like life was a menu. When I tried to ask about him, what he loved, what made him laugh, he gave short answers and returned to evaluating me. Then he asked, calmly, "Do you come from a stable family?" Stable. The word landed between us. My fingers tightened around my napkin. "I come from a real family, like everyone." Something flickered in his expression. It vanished fast. A waiter appeared and asked for drinks. "Sparkling water," Ethan said. "Coffee," I said, even though it was late. I needed something to hold. My phone buzzed against the wood. "Maya, you okay?" Eyes. I didn't answer. If I answered, it would become real. Ethan cleared his throat. "I don't think this is going to work," he said. The sentence was quiet, and it still cut. Heat rushed to my face. My chest tightened. He kept his tone gentle. "You seem nice, truly, just not what I'm looking for." Nice. That word has always meant easy to leave. I nodded too fast. "Okay, no worries." Right on cue, the waiter returned with our drinks. My coffee landed with a soft thud. Ethan's water clinked beside his hand. "Enjoy," the waiter said. I wrapped my fingers around the cup. The heat stung, and I welcomed it. I took 1 small sip just to prove I could, then set it down like it had betrayed me. Ethan reached for his jacket, relief settling on him. "I'll cover my part," he said, already halfway gone. "It's fine," I whispered. I stood. My chair scraped the floor, too loud. My hands fumbled with my coat sleeves. My breath came shallow, and for a second the whole room felt too bright. My phone buzzed again. "Maya, call me." I swallowed, forced my mouth into something like a smile, and lifted my bag. "Good luck," Ethan said. "Yeah," I said, staring at the door. "You too." I walked away from the table, away from the warm light, away from being measured and found lacking. And then a small voice rose near the bar, clear as a bell. "Dad?" I stopped mid-step, coat half on, one hand still gripping my bag strap like it could keep me from tipping over. "Dad?" The word didn't belong to my night. It belonged to someone else's life. School lunches, bedtime stories, small shoes lined by a door. I turned without meaning to. Near the bar, a little boy sat on a high stool with his legs swinging, sneakers not quite reaching the rung. He had a coloring book open in front of him and a fistful of crayons scattered like confetti. His cheeks were round, his hair a mess that looked like it had been brushed by a tired hand. He stared toward the entrance with the serious focus only kids have. And behind him, a man rose slowly from a booth. He didn't pop up like a hero in a movie. He stood like someone used to carrying weight, quietly, carefully, as if he didn't want to draw attention, even though his body would. Late 30s, maybe early 40s, dark hair, slightly damp at the edges like he'd been caught in the rain, a worn hoodie under a dark coat. His face was tired in an honest way. Tired eyes, a jaw that held tension, the kind of exhaustion that doesn't look dramatic, just permanent. He glanced at his son, then scanned the room. His gaze landed on me, not in the way Ethan had looked at me, like a list. This man's eyes held for half a second longer, like he was making sure I was real, like he'd seen me shrink at the table and it had bothered him. He stepped away from the booth. I should have kept walking. That was the smart thing. Leave the restaurant, call Maya, laugh about it tomorrow, delete the app, pretend none of it touched me. But my feet didn't move. The man crossed the space between us, weaving through tables with the kind of calm that made people instinctively shift their chairs out of his way. The jazz kept playing, forks kept clinking. Somewhere a couple laughed. The restaurant stayed alive while I stood there, suspended. He stopped at the edge of my table, close enough that I could smell rain on his coat, close enough that I could see the faint crease between his brows, like he'd been holding words for a while. He looked at my abandoned coffee, then at my face. "I'm sorry," he said first. 2 words, simple, but they hit me so hard my throat tightened. I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice. He took a breath as if bracing himself. Then he said it, quiet, clear. "Be my wife." My brain went blank in a way that wasn't funny. It was like someone had unplugged the lights behind my eyes. I stared at him, not blinking. My ears rang. "What?" I managed. His cheeks colored immediately, like he could hear how insane it sounded now that it existed in the air. "Not," he shook his head once, "not like that. I'm not trying to." He exhaled, slow, controlled. His hands stayed visible, open, like he was proving something. "Please," he said, "just listen." I glanced around, expecting people to be staring, expecting 100 eyes to be glued to the scene. But the room was wrapped in its own conversations. A server walked past with a tray. Someone at the bar lifted a glass. The world didn't stop. Only I did. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket, and the vibration felt like a warning. "Who are you?" I asked, voice low. He looked toward the boy. The child was watching us now, crayons paused mid-air, eyes wide with that mix of curiosity and worry. The man leaned a little closer, not invading, just trying not to make it a spectacle. "My name is Daniel," he said. "That's my son, Noah." Noah waved once, small and uncertain, then looked down fast like he was embarrassed he'd been seen. My chest tightened at the sight. Daniel's voice softened when he spoke again. "I need help, tonight, just for a few minutes." I let out a laugh that didn't sound like me. "Help with what? You just proposed to me in a restaurant." "I know," he swallowed. "I know how it sounded." My heart was beating too hard. Adrenaline made my fingers cold. "Is this a prank?" I asked. "Because if it is, congratulations. You picked the worst possible person." Daniel's eyes flickered. Pain, guilt, something like regret. It's not a prank. I looked at him harder, searching for the signs, the quick smile, the hungry eyes, the angle, but there was no slickness, no charm, no performance, just urgency, wrapped in a strange kind of restraint. "Why me?" I asked. He hesitated. His gaze moved to my table again, my coffee, my coat, my bag, the space where Ethan had been sitting. "I saw what happened," he said simply. My stomach dropped. Of course he had. Of course someone had. Shame rose in my chest, hot and instant. I straightened like posture could erase humiliation. Daniel continued, carefully, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to watch. I was just here." And then I heard him. He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "I heard you say, 'It's okay,' when it clearly wasn't." The air between us shifted. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to tell him to mind his business, but my throat clenched, and for a second I couldn't breathe. Because he was right. I had said, "It's okay," like a reflex, like the only way to survive embarrassment was to pretend it didn't hurt. Daniel reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope, thick, slightly bent, like it had been carried around too long. Papers inside, a corner of a form sticking out. He didn't shove it at me, he just held it like proof that his words had weight. "There's an appointment," he said. "A meeting in a few minutes, and I need them to take me seriously." My eyes narrowed. "Who is them?" His throat bobbed. "Someone who decides whether my son's life gets easier or harder." He said it like he'd said it before, like he'd had to explain his worth to strangers more times than he could count. I glanced toward Noah again. He had gone back to his coloring book, but his crayon strokes were slow and uneven, like he was listening with his whole body. My chest tightened in a different way now. Not embarrassment, something closer to recognition. Still, I forced myself to stay sharp. "And you think," I pointed a finger between us, "that calling me your wife is going to fix that?" Daniel's mouth twitched, but it wasn't a smile. It was bitterness. "I hate that it might," he said quietly, "but yes." A server appeared beside us, cheerful and oblivious. "Would you like another coffee, miss?" I looked at the cup on my table. It had barely been touched. The surface was still, dark and glossy like a mirror. "No, I'm fine." The server walked away. Daniel didn't move, didn't rush me. That patience was almost more unsettling than the proposal. "You can say no," he said. "I'm not going to follow you out. I'm not going to argue. I saw you, and I thought—" He stopped, eyes dropping to the floor for a second, like he didn't want to admit the next part. "Like you might understand what it feels like to be judged in 5 minutes, he finished. My stomach turned. Because I did. My phone buzzed again. Maya again, probably. My pocket felt heavy with the life I was supposed to return to. I pulled the phone out halfway, just enough to see the screen glow, then slid it back without reading it. The light made Daniel's face briefly sharper in my vision, every tired line, every controlled breath. "Let's be clear," I said, voice shaky but firm. "I don't know you. I don't owe you anything, and I'm not—" My throat tightened. "I'm not in the mood to be used as a prop in someone else's story." Daniel's eyes held mine. "I know," he said. "That's why I asked, not demanded." I stared at him, trying to decide if I was about to make the dumbest choice of my life. From the bar, Noah's small voice floated again, softer this time. "Dad, are we leaving?" Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't look back right away, like he was afraid his son would see his fear. "No," he said gently, still facing me. Not yet. Then he met my eyes again and added, barely above a whisper, "Please." I didn't answer. Not yet. But across the room, near my old table, Ethan hadn't left. He was standing now, watching us, and the expression on his face wasn't polite anymore. It was interested. Ethan walked over like he still owned the last 5 minutes of my life. He stopped at the end of my table, eyes flicking between me and Daniel, then down to the envelope in Daniel's hand like it offended him. "Everything okay here?" Ethan asked, polite on the surface. The tone underneath was something else. Daniel didn't step back. He didn't puff up either. He just shifted slightly, subtle, protective, so his body was between Ethan and me without making it a scene. "We're fine," Daniel said. Ethan's gaze landed on me. "We?" He let out a small laugh. "I leave for 2 minutes and you're engaged?" Heat rushed to my face again, but this time it wasn't shame. It was anger, sharp and clean. "It's not like that," I said. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Then what is it?" Daniel's voice stayed calm. "It's not your business." Ethan straightened, offended by the idea that someone could talk to him that way. "Excuse me?" I felt my hands shake, so I wrapped them around my coffee cup even though it had gone lukewarm. The ceramic steadied me. The table steadied me. My breathing didn't. "Ethan," I said softly, forcing control into my voice, "you ended the date." He blinked like he'd forgotten that part. "Yeah, I did, and I'm being nice about it. He looked Daniel up and down. "Who is this guy?" Daniel didn't rise to it. He glanced toward the bar. Noah was watching again, crayon frozen mid-air. That did something to me. It made the restaurant feel smaller, like adult pride was suddenly loud and childish. "I'm leaving," I told Ethan. His face tightened. With him? I hated that he could still make me feel small with one word. Daniel spoke before I could. "She's choosing to leave," he said. "That's different." Ethan scoffed, but his eyes slid away, as if he didn't like the way that sounded when someone else said it out loud. "Whatever," he muttered. "Good luck with whatever this is." He turned and walked off, but slower than before, like he wanted us to notice him leaving, like he wanted the last word without saying it. When he was gone, the air felt lighter, not safe, just lighter. Daniel exhaled through his nose like he'd been holding something in. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I didn't want to involve you in that." "I'm already involved," I said, voice low. My heart was still running. "So talk fast." He nodded and sat, careful as if asking permission with his posture. He placed the envelope on the table and slid it toward me just enough for me to see official-looking forms and a printed appointment time. "I have a meeting in 10 minutes, he said. "It's for a lease approval, the kind where they pretend it's about money, but it's really about what you look like." My stomach tightened. "A landlord interview?" He gave a tight half-smile. "A final verification, they call it that. They want a family, or something that looks like one." He tapped his wrist. His watch face had a thin crack running through it, like time itself had taken a hit. "I work, I pay, I show up, but I'm a single dad with a kid and no ring. They hear risk." I stared at the papers. The coffee smell mixed with rain and perfume and fried food from the kitchen. Suddenly, I could hear everything. Ice clinking, a laugh too loud, a chair scraping. "And you think I'm, what, a costume?" Daniel's eyes held mine, steady and tired. "No," he said. "I think you're someone they won't dismiss in 2 seconds." My throat tightened at that. I hated how close it came to the truth. He leaned forward slightly, voice dropping. "All I need is for you to stand next to me while I sign. Answer 1 or 2 basic questions if they ask. That's it. Then you walk away and you never see me again." I swallowed. "And if I say no?" He didn't argue. "Then I figure something else out," he said, simply. "I'll still be grateful you listened." The respect in that, real, unforced, made my chest ache. I took a breath. "Boundaries," I said. "No touching, no dramatic lines. You don't get to decide anything about me." Danielle nodded once. "Agreed." I looked down at the envelope again, at the time printed in black, and felt the weight of Noah's small eyes from across the room. I lifted my gaze. "Okay," I said, barely above a whisper. 5 minutes. Daniel's shoulders loosened like a rope finally cut. "Thank you," he said. Then, gently, like he'd known me longer than he had any right to, he added, "Thank you, Claire." My blood went cold. "Don't say my name," I said, sharper than I meant to. Daniel blinked, like he'd expected the question but still hated it. I pushed my phone closer to my body, suddenly aware of how exposed I'd been all night. My face, my reactions, my humiliation on a public table. "How do you know it?" I asked. The cafe felt louder now. A burst of laughter from the bar, a spoon clinking against glass, rain speeding up against the window like it was impatient. Daniel didn't flinch. He didn't pretend. He just glanced past me toward the hostess stand. "They said it," he replied quietly, "when you checked in. Claire, right? I heard it." I held his gaze, waiting for the slip, for the too quick answer. He continued, careful. "And then your phone lit up. The name was on the screen. Maya. She texted you. I saw the preview when it buzzed." My cheeks burned, not because he was lying, but because he might be telling the truth. The worst kind of truth. The kind where no one technically did anything wrong, but I still felt watched. My fingers curled around the edge of the table. "So you were listening," I said. "I was," he admitted. "No excuses, no charm. I'm sorry." Silence stretched between us. The jazz drifted on like it didn't care. I looked over at Noah. He'd gone back to coloring, but every few seconds his eyes flicked up toward us, checking if his dad was still okay. His crayon strokes were small, controlled, like he was trying to stay quiet on purpose. That image held my throat for a second. I turned back to Daniel. "You realize this is insane." "I do," he said, voice low. "I just don't have a lot of options." He checked his watch again, cracked glass catching the light. Then he gathered the envelope and stood. "If you're still in, we should move. It'll be quieter over there." He nodded toward a corner booth near the window. Dim light, less traffic, a little away from the bar noise. A place where people wouldn't overhear and turn our business into entertainment. I followed because my body had already decided something my brain hadn't approved yet. As we walked, I felt eyes on me. Maybe real, maybe imagined. I kept my chin up anyway. The air smelled like coffee and citrus cleaner, and wet wool from coats drying near the door. Daniel slid into the booth across from me, then immediately angled his body slightly so he could still see Noah. That detail did something to my nervous system. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't dramatic, it was real. Noah's eyes met mine for half a second. Then he looked down fast and kept coloring, cheeks pink. Daniel placed the envelope between us, but didn't push it forward, like he didn't want to pressure me with paper. "You said no touching," he reminded me, "so for the meeting, just stand beside me. If they ask about you, we keep it simple. You don't owe them your whole life." My throat tightened. "And exactly are you telling them I am?" He hesitated for the first time. "My wife," he said quietly. "Or soon to be. Something that sounds stable enough to stop the questions." I let out a slow breath. The word wife sat heavy in my chest, too intimate, too loaded. "You could say fiancé," I offered, "less final?" Daniel nodded like he'd accept anything. "Fiancé, okay." He watched my face like he was reading the places I wanted to run. Then he said, softer, I'm not proud of this. I stared at the rain streaking down the window. The streetlights outside were blurred into warm coins of light. People passed with umbrellas like small moving shadows. I'm not proud of my night either, I said. Daniel's expression shifted, something like understanding. He didn't pity me. That mattered. The silence stretched again, but different this time. Not awkward, not sharp. A waiter came by and set a small basket of bread down near the booth, likely by mistake. Daniel looked ready to correct him, but Noah's eyes widened like it was treasure. It's okay, I said quickly. He can have it. Daniel glanced at me, surprised. Then he smiled, just barely, like the muscles in his face weren't used to it. Noah hopped down from the stool and padded over, careful and quiet, and Daniel pulled the basket closer to him. You say thank you, Daniel murmured. Noah looked at me, serious. Thank you, he said, and his voice was small but steady. I nodded, my throat tight. You're welcome. Noah reached into the basket and pulled out a roll. He tore it in half, then hesitated, eyes darting between me and his dad, like he was making a decision. He set one half on a napkin and slid it toward me. It was the smallest gesture, but it hit like a wave. Daniel watched it happen, his jaw tightening. He didn't speak for a moment. When he finally did, his voice was quiet. He doesn't do that with strangers. I stared at the roll like it might be dangerous. My palms were suddenly warm. I'm not a stranger? I asked, before I could stop myself. Daniel's eyes held mine. Not to him, he said. He saw you first. I swallowed hard. Then, like the universe needed to keep the pressure on, a woman stood up from a table near the window, mid-40s, sharp posture, neat hair, a folder under her arm. She turned her head and looked directly at our booth. Not a casual glance, a stare that landed on me like she already knew me. My skin went cold. Daniel followed my gaze. His shoulders tightened. That's her, he murmured. The landlord? I whispered. He nodded once. Final verification. The woman started walking toward us, heels clicking softly against the floor, and I realized something terrifying. I wasn't ready.
She approached with the confidence of someone who didn't have to ask permission to enter a conversation. Mid-40s, sharp blazer, hair pulled back, so tight it made her look even more precise. A thin folder hugged her chest. Her eyes moved fast, Daniel, then Noah, then me, like she was building a conclusion before she even spoke. Daniel stood first, not defensive, just ready. Ms. Harrington, he said. So she was the landlord. Of course, she had a name like that. Something clean and controlled. Mr. Reed, she replied, voice cool but not unkind. Her gaze settled on me again. And you must be... My mouth went dry. Daniel didn't hesitate. This is Claire, he said. My fiancé. Fiancé. The word hit my ribs from the inside. My fingers clenched under the table. Ms. Harrington's eyebrows lifted slightly, approval or at least interest. Her posture softened by half a degree, like the world had just become safer. Lovely to meet you, she said, and the tone was different now. Warmer, politer, like I'd unlocked a level of respect Daniel alone couldn't. That fact made something bitter twist in my stomach. I forced a smile anyway. Nice to meet you. Noah stood beside Daniel's leg, holding a bread roll like it was a shield. His eyes flicked up at me, then away. Small, quiet, trying to be brave. Ms. Harrington leaned slightly, her expression gentling for the first time. Hello there, she said to Noah. Noah didn't answer. He just looked at Daniel. Daniel's hand hovered near his son's shoulder, not touching unless needed. Noah, he murmured. This is the lady I told you about. You're okay. Noah gave a tiny nod, then stared at his roll. Ms. Harrington took that as enough and turned back to us. We can do this quickly, she said. I know it's late. She slid into the booth across from me like she belonged there. then open her folder. Papers, a pen, a small printed checklist. My pulse thudded in my ears. Daniel sat beside me, not too close, leaving space, respecting the boundary we'd set. Still, his presence made the booth feel anchored. Ms. Harrington glanced at my left hand. My ring finger was bare. I noticed the glance. My cheeks warmed. I lifted my coffee cup to my lips, even though it had gone cold. Daniel caught it. He didn't panic. He didn't reach for my hand. He simply said, calmly, "We haven't done rings yet. We're keeping it simple." Ms. Harrington smiled like that was charming. "Smart," she said, but her eyes kept scanning. "A test. Okay, Claire. Breathe. One question at a time." She turned to Daniel. "Employment is verified. Income meets requirements," she said, tapping a page. "But you understand our position. A one-bedroom, second-floor unit. Shared walls. We have to be sure that we won't be a problem," Daniel finished, voice steady. Ms. Harrington didn't deny it. "That you won't be a risk," she corrected, and the words sat heavy between us. I felt Daniel's jaw tighten, just once. Then she looked at me again. "And you, Claire, do you plan to live with Mr. Reed?" I swallowed. My throat felt tight like a scarf pulled too close. "Yes," I said, because the situation demanded yes, and because it was simpler than a lie with too many parts. Ms. Harrington nodded as she made a note. "Where do you currently live?" I glanced at Daniel for half a second, too fast to be obvious. Just enough to confirm we were still on the same page. He gave me a small nod. "Go with something true." "I live about 15 minutes from here," I said. "In Midtown." Not a lie, just incomplete. "And your work?" she asked. "I work in communications," I said. "Mostly remote. Some client meetings." Also true. My palms were sweating under the table, but my voice stayed surprisingly even, like my body had found a survival mode it didn't tell me about. Ms. Harrington's pen clicked once. "Any pets?" "No," Daniel answered quickly. "No," I echoed. Noah shifted beside the booth, toes tapping the floor. He was listening. He was trying to understand the adult words that decided where he'd sleep. Ms. Harrington leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. "This neighborhood isn't cheap," she said. Not accusing, just probing. "What made you choose it?" Daniel spoke first, and his voice softened when he said, "Noah's school." Ms. Harrington's gaze moved to the boy. "And how has he been handling the move?" she asked. The question wasn't for Daniel. It was for me. My stomach flipped. I glanced at Noah and his big eyes lifted, watching me like he was holding his breath. I could have faked it. I could have performed. But something in me refused to turn a child into a prop. So I answered like a person. "He's trying," I said quietly. Kids feel everything, even when they don't have words for it. Ms. Harrington's expression changed. Not a lot, but enough that I saw it. She looked at Daniel differently after that. Like he wasn't just an applicant anymore. Like he was a father. Daniel's eyes flicked toward me. Gratitude, quick and contained. Ms. Harrington glanced down at her list again. "Emergency contact," she said. "Who's the first call if something happens? If Noah gets sick? If you're delayed?" Daniel paused. I felt the pause in my bones. That was a real question. A real-life question. Not a form question. This was the edge. Daniel cleared his throat. "Claire," he said. My heart jumped. Ms. Harrington looked at me. "Is that accurate?" I could have said no. I could have stepped out right there and protected myself. Instead, I nodded once slow. "Yes," I said. "That's accurate." Ms. Harrington made a final note, then closed the folder. "All right," she said. "We'll proceed. You'll get a call tomorrow. If everything checks out, the keys are yours by end of week." Daniel's shoulders dropped like he'd been holding a breath for months. "Thank you," he said. Ms. Harrington stood. "Congratulations," she said to both of us now. "And, Claire, nice to meet someone who understands what stability really means." She walked away, heels clicking, disappearing back into the warm noise of the restaurant. For a moment, none of us spoke. Noah let out a tiny breath like he'd been underwater. Then he climbed onto the booth and leaned against Daniel's side, eyelids heavy. Daniel didn't move at first. like he was afraid to break the moment. I stared at the closed folder left behind in my mind and felt my pulse slow, just enough to notice the tremble in my hands. Daniel turned his head slightly toward me. I owe you. Don't. I interrupted, voice shaky. Don't make it weird. He nodded, a faint smile touching his mouth like relief. Then, as he reached into his pocket for his phone, probably to message someone, probably to breathe, the screen flashed on. For half a second I saw it. His lock screen. A photo. My face. And I felt the room tilt under me. For a second I couldn't speak. My face on his phone, lit up in that private, casual way people keep family, not strangers, not women they met an hour ago. Daniel, I said quietly. He followed my eyes, saw what I saw, and the color drained from his face. He locked the screen so fast it looked guilty, even if it wasn't. I can explain, he said. My pulse climbed again, sharp and fast, like my body recognized danger before my mind could label it. Start, I said. My voice didn't shake, but my hands did. I hid them under the table. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't get defensive. He set his phone down, face down like a surrender. When I heard your name at the hostess stand, he said, I panicked. I stared at him. So you saved my photo? He swallowed hard. No, I didn't save it. It's from the app. The app. I repeated, my stomach dropping. He nodded once, shame in the movement. The same blind date app. I saw you there, your profile. I recognized your first name from the hostess, and your picture matched the screen I'd seen before. My mind flashed to the way Ethan had been so certain I wasn't what he was looking for, like I was a product he could return. You were on the app, I said slower now. Tonight. Daniel's eyes lifted to mine. Not for dating, he said quickly. I was scrolling. I shouldn't have been. It was stupid. Lonely people do stupid things at night. The honesty landed hard. Not comforting, just real. So you looked me up, I said. Yes, he admitted. For 30 seconds. I wanted to know if you seemed safe. If you were real. I'm not proud of it. His voice lowered. I'm sorry, Claire. The apology didn't erase the feeling. That small, cold feeling that someone had reached into my life without permission. I leaned back, drawing a line with my posture. You don't get to do that, I said. You don't get to decide I'm safe, like you're the one with the authority. Daniel nodded, jaw tight. You're right. Silence pooled between us. The restaurant noise filled the gaps, ice clinking, a chair scraping, rain ticking against the glass. Noah shifted in his sleep against Daniel's side, then murmured something soft and unintelligible. Daniel's shoulders softened instinctively. He didn't even look down. His body just knew how to hold his son steady. It made me hate my own confusion. I looked at the phone again, face down on the table like a secret. Why did you choose me? I asked quieter. Really? Daniel's eyes flicked toward Noah, then back to me. Because you didn't get loud, he said. When he rejected you, you didn't beg. You didn't throw a drink. You just stood up and tried to leave with dignity. My throat tightened. I hated that he'd witnessed it. I hated that it mattered. And because, he added, voice rougher now, Noah watched you too. As if on cue, Noah stirred, eyes half opening. He looked at me, then at Daniel, then back at me like he was confirming I was still there. Is she mad? Noah whispered. Daniel's face gentled instantly. No, he said. She's just thinking. Noah's brows knit together. He studied me with that terrifying kid honesty. She's kind, he said like it was a fact. Then he yawned and laid his head back down. Kind. The word hit differently coming from him. Not an excuse to leave. Not a label that made me disposable. Just something he noticed. My chest tightened. I took a slow breath and felt my heartbeat settle by 1 degree. I looked at Daniel. I'm still not your solution, I said. I know, he replied. And I don't want any more surprises. He nodded. No more. My phone buzzed on the table, breaking the fragile calm. The screen lit up. Maya, where are you? Call me. Now. I stared at it, thumb hovering. Then another notification slid in, different name. Ethan. A photo attachment. My stomach dropped before I even opened it. Under the photo, his message appeared. Who is he? I didn't open Ethan's photo. Not yet. Just seeing the message was enough to make my skin prickle. Like he'd reached back into my night to reclaim it. I stood up too fast, the booth creaking. I need air, I said. Daniel looked up immediately. Okay, he replied, calm. I'll stay here. No questions. No pressure. That made me pause for half a beat. Then keep moving. Outside. The awning caught most of the rain, but the wind still pushed mist and sideways. The night air was cold enough to wake me up completely. It smelled like wet pavement and car exhaust and that sharp, clean scent that comes right before a storm breaks. My hands were shaking as I pulled my phone out again. Maya. Of course it was Maya. I hit call. She answered on the first ring. Claire? Where are you? Are you okay? I pressed my back to the brick wall under the awning's edge. The neon sign above flickered, reflecting in puddles like broken light. I'm okay. I lied automatically. No, Maya said. That pause means you're not. What happened? Did he say something awful? Did you leave? I swallowed hard. He ended it, I said. Like a business meeting. Oh my God. I'm coming. Wait. I cut in, voice tight. It got weird. There was a beat of silence. To find weird, I looked out at the street. A taxi splashed through a puddle. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed like nothing mattered. A man walked over, I said. A single dad. He asked me to pretend to be his fiancée, so a landlord would approve his lease. Maya didn't speak for a full second, as if her brain had to restart. Then Claire, before you say it, I squeezed my eyes shut. I know it sounds insane. It doesn't sound insane, she said, voice suddenly flat. It sounds dangerous. It's not like that, I insisted, but the words felt thin in the cold air. He's not creepy. He's just desperate. Desperate men can be creepy, she snapped. Did you give him your address? Your last name? No, I said quickly. No, I didn't. Is this man with you right now? Maya asked. I glanced back through the window. From outside, the restaurant looked like a warm aquarium. I could see Daniel in the booth, head bent toward Noah, shielding him with his body without making it obvious. His phone still face down, his shoulders rigid like he was holding himself in place. He's inside, I said. Maya exhaled sharply. Okay, here's what you do. You share your location with me. Right now, and you do not get in a car with him. You do not go anywhere private. You hear me? I swallowed. Yes. Are you alone outside? She asked. Yes. Good. Stay where people can see you. And Claire. Her voice softened just a fraction. You don't have to fix someone's life because your date made you feel disposable. That hit hard. My throat tightened. I'm not fixing him, I said, but quieter. I'm just helping. Maya let out a humorless laugh. That's literally fixing. I didn't answer. The rain kept hissing against the street. Did your date leave? Maya asked. I stared at the glowing screen in my hand. Ethan's name still sat there, waiting. No, I said. He's still here. He texted me. A photo. Maya cursed under her breath. Open it. Let's see what he's doing. My thumb hovered over the attachment. My chest felt tight, like there was a band around it. I can't, I said. Not yet. Claire. I know, I whispered. I don't want him to have access to this part of me anymore. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, slower. Okay, then don't give him access. Block him. I stared at the option. Block. One tap. A clean ending. But something about it felt wrong. Not because I wanted Ethan, but because I hated the idea that he could push me around even now. Like I still had to react to him. I'll decide in a minute, I said. Fine, Maya replied. But you're sharing your location. No, I did. My phone showed the tiny confirmation, and I felt a small amount of air return to my lungs. Are you coming? I asked. I'm 10 minutes away, she said. But Claire, please, don't go anywhere with this guy. Stay in public. If he tries anything, you walk straight to staff. He won't, I said and realized I believed it. Maya sighed. You don't know that. I looked back through the window again. Daniel was standing now, not rushing out, just watching the door, watching me, keeping distance, keeping his hands visible even from inside, like he understood fear, like he respected it. Then he stepped out. Slowly, he stopped a few feet away under the awning, close enough that I could see his face clearly, far enough that I didn't feel cornered. "I'm sorry," he said again, voice low. "I didn't mean to push you." Maya's voice was still in my ear. "Who is that? Is he outside?" "Yes," I said quietly into the phone. Daniel didn't lean in. He waited. "I can go," he offered, looking at me, not pleading, not manipulating. "You can walk away. I won't follow you." My chest tightened because that was exactly what Ethan hadn't offered. Ethan had ended things like I was a product he'd decided against. Daniel, somehow, was giving me choice. I swallowed. "Why are you being decent?" I asked Daniel before I could stop myself. His mouth twitched in something like pain. "Because Noah is watching," he said. "And because you deserve it." The words hit me like a warm hand on a bruise. I turned slightly away, so Maya wouldn't hear my face change. "Maya," I said into the phone, "he's not pressuring me. He's doing the opposite." "That doesn't mean he's safe," she warned, but her tone shifted. Less sharp, more careful. "I know," I whispered. "You're right." Daniel waited, rain misting his hair at the edges. I lowered my phone slightly and looked at him. "I'm not going anywhere private," I said. "And after tonight, you tell me everything. No more, I'll explain later." Daniel nodded once. "Yes." I took a breath that felt like swallowing fear. Then I walked back inside. The warmth hit my skin. The noise wrapped around me again. Noah was still asleep, curled against the booth like a small, exhausted comma. Daniel slid back into his seat, leaving that same respectful space. I sat too, heart still racing, and finally looked down at my phone. Ethan's message was still there. The photo. I opened it. It was taken from across the restaurant, zoomed in, grainy but clear enough. Daniel standing near my table, me frozen with my coat half on, and in the bottom corner, like proof of intent, Ethan's reflection in the window, phone raised, watching. A cold wave rolled through me. Before I could even react, another text from Ethan appeared. "I know who that man is." The words sat on my screen like a threat. "I know who that man is." My stomach tightened so fast it stole my breath. I looked up immediately, scanning the restaurant for Ethan. He was near the front now, halfway between the hostess stand and the door, pretending to check something on his phone, but his posture was angled toward us, like his attention had never really left. Daniel noticed my shift. His eyes followed mine, then returned to my face. "What is it?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. My fingers hovered over the screen, and the tiny blue light made my hands look paler than they were. Maya's voice echoed in my head. "Don't give him access." But Ethan already had it. He had the photo. He had the story. And now, he had a hook to pull me back. I typed one word, then erased it. Typed again. "What do you mean?" Then I deleted that too. I forced my breathing to slow. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Like I was trying to calm a frightened animal that lived under my ribs. Daniel waited without pushing. Noah slept, cheek pressed into Daniel's coat, unaware that adults were deciding his future with texts and tension. Finally, I showed Daniel the message without handing him my phone. Just turned the screen toward him. Daniel's jaw tightened. Not fear, something older. Recognition. "Ethan," he murmured. "You know him?" I asked, voice low. Daniel's eyes flicked up to meet mine. "Not personally." He glanced toward the front again. Ethan looked away too quickly. Daniel exhaled through his nose. "He's trying to control the narrative," he said quietly. "He didn't like losing you." My throat tightened at that because it was true. Ethan had ended the date, yet somehow still wanted to decide what happened next. A notification came in. Another message from Ethan. "Don't let him fool you. Ask him about Westbridge." Westbridge. The word meant nothing to me, but the way Daniel's shoulders stiffened told me it meant something to him. I looked at Daniel. "What is Westbridge?" Daniel's eyes went to the table. His fingers flexed once, like he was resisting an instinct to grab his phone, to run. I used to work there, he said. That's it. I asked. Daniel's voice stayed calm, but there was strain under it now. It's a company, financial services, high pressure. I stared at him. Ethan knows that. Daniel's mouth tightened. Maybe, or he's guessing. People talk. People talk. Like Daniel had an entire life that could be reduced to rumor in a restaurant. My skin prickled. I hated how quickly Ethan's words had infected the room. Ethan took a few steps closer, like he sensed his moment. Claire, he said, voice smooth, like we were still on a date. Can we talk? Daniel didn't move, but his presence shifted, like a door quietly closing. I met Ethan's eyes. You already talked, I said. You ended it. Ethan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I did, and I meant it. His gaze flicked to Daniel. I'm just concerned. Concerned? The same tone people use when they want to sound kind while cutting someone down. Why? I asked. Ethan lowered his voice, leaning in slightly, as if sharing a secret. Because that guy is not some sweet single dad who happened to notice you. He's complicated. Daniel's eyes stayed on Ethan, calm and cold. I felt my pulse beat in my fingertips. What do you actually know? I asked Ethan. Ethan hesitated, and that hesitation was everything. He didn't know details. He had a story he wanted me to believe. I know he worked at Westbridge, Ethan said. And I know people don't just leave Westbridge unless something happens. Daniel's jaw tensed once, then relaxed, like he was choosing not to react. Ethan's gaze returned to me. He's using you, he said like it was a fact. Just be careful. Something snapped cleanly inside me. I was careful, I said, when I sat at that table and answered your questions like I was applying for a role in your life. Ethan blinked, startled by the edge in my voice. And you still rejected me, I continued. Quiet, controlled. So don't pretend you're protecting me now. You're protecting your ego. Ethan's smile faltered. That's not fair. I let out a small laugh. Fair wasn't really your thing tonight. For a second, the mask slipped. I saw irritation, ownership. Then Ethan's eyes darted to Noah, asleep in the booth, and his expression smoothed again. He lowered his voice further. Ask him why he needs a wife for Elise. Ask him why he has your photo. Ask him what he did at Westbridge. My stomach tightened at the word did. I turned slowly to Daniel. Daniel didn't look away. His eyes held mine with a kind of resignation, like he'd expected this moment to come. Tell me, I said quietly, the real story, right now. Daniel nodded once. I used to have a title, he said. A good salary, a clean apartment, the kind of life people think means you're safe. He glanced toward the window, rain sliding down the glass in long, steady lines. Westbridge was constant pressure, he continued. Everyone was chasing something. Promotions, numbers, approval. His mouth tightened. I chased it too. I watched his hands. They weren't shaking. They were still, too still. One day, he said, my son came to my office for a holiday event. He was little. He had a paper crown on his head. A faint, painful smile flickered. He kept asking me to look at him, and I kept saying 1 minute. The silence around the booth thickened. Daniel swallowed. Later that night, he fell asleep in the car, and I realized I couldn't remember his laugh from earlier. I'd been there, but I wasn't there. My throat tightened. Ethan snorted softly, like he was bored by sentiment. Daniel's eyes shifted to him for half a second, cold, controlled, then back to me. I didn't do anything illegal, he said clearly, as if answering a question I hadn't asked but needed answered anyway. I didn't hurt anyone. I just broke myself. His voice lowered. Panic attacks. No sleep. I started becoming someone Noah didn't recognize. Noah shifted in his sleep at the sound of his name, then settled again. Daniel's voice softened. I left. I took a lower-paying job. I moved closer to a school I could actually get him into. And now he exhaled. Now people look at me and see unstable because I'm not wearing the old version of success. Ethan scoffed. Convenient story. Daniel didn't react to him. He looked only at me. I approached you because I was desperate, he admitted. but not to trap you, not to use you. His eyes tightened. I did it because I've seen how fast people decide who deserves dignity. And tonight, I watched them decide you didn't. The words hit me low in my chest. I blinked hard, forcing tears back before they could form. Not because I wanted to cry in public, because I wasn't ready to feel that much. I looked at Ethan. He was waiting for me to turn against Daniel, to prove he mattered. Instead, I asked Ethan, "Why are you still here?" Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. He couldn't answer without admitting the truth. I turned back to Daniel. "And the wife line?" I asked softly. Daniel's jaw tightened with shame. "Because people listen when a woman is claimed," he said, voice bitter. And I hated myself for thinking it would work. The booth fell into a quiet, so deep I could hear the rain. Then Daniel added, barely above a whisper, "I don't want to win. I want to breathe." My throat tightened, and that's when Noah's small hand, half asleep, reached out and found my sleeve. His fingers curled gently, like he was anchoring himself. I froze. Daniel's eyes widened slightly, then softened. Noah didn't wake. He just held on. And I realized, whatever Ethan was trying to do, whatever story he wanted, this moment was real. Then Daniel's phone buzzed once on the table. He glanced at it, and his face changed. He turned the screen toward me. A text from Ms. Harrington. "We need one more verification tonight. 10 minutes. Please confirm." My stomach dropped, because the night wasn't done with us yet. For a second, the restaurant felt too warm, like the air had thickened into something I couldn't swallow. Daniel stared at Ms. Harrington's message, thumb hovering over the screen. His face was calm, but his eyes weren't. His eyes were a man counting everything he could lose. "No," I heard myself say before I could think it through. Daniel looked up. "No, you said this was done," I whispered. My voice sounded small in the booth. "You said I could leave." "You can," he said immediately. "You still can." His words were so quick, so sincere, that the anger in my chest softened into something else. Fear. Daniel's phone buzzed again. Another message. "If we don't complete it tonight, we move to the next applicant." Daniel closed his eyes for a brief second, like he was absorbing a hit without letting anyone see the bruise. Noah shifted against his side, murmured in his sleep, then tightened his fingers on my sleeve like I was a handle. My throat tightened hard. I looked at my phone and opened Maya's chat without thinking. My location was still shared. My fingers hovered over the call button. Daniel watched me, then said quietly, "Stay in public. Bring someone. I'm not trying to get you alone. I'm trying to get through this." The fact that he said it before I had to make my chest ache. I stood slowly. "Where is it?" "Building lobby," Daniel said. 2 blocks. Bright lights. Cameras. Door staff. He swallowed. "It's a signature and a quick ID check." She said it standard. I glanced toward the front of the restaurant. Ethan was still there, watching like a hawk, pretending not to. The idea of him following us made my skin crawl. "I'm calling my friend," I said. Daniel nodded once. "Good." I stepped aside near the window, phone pressed to my ear. Maya answered immediately. "Tell me you're leaving." "We might be," I said. "There's another verification. In a building lobby. 2 blocks. Maya made a sound like she was holding back a scream. "Claire." "I'm not going alone," I said quickly. "I'm staying in public, and I want you to come." "I'm already 5 minutes away," she snapped. "Don't move until I'm there." I glanced back at the booth. Daniel was gently shifting Noah, lifting him carefully, like he'd done it 1,000 times, like his arms knew the exact weight of his son's sleep. Noah's head lolled against Daniel's shoulder, mouth open slightly. His small hand let go of my sleeve. Then, without waking, found Daniel's hoodie and gripped it. My throat tightened again. "Maya," I whispered. "I don't think he's dangerous." "That's not the same as safe," she said. Then softer, "I'm coming. Stay visible." I ended the call and slid my phone into my coat pocket, heart pounding. When I turned back, Daniel was standing with Noah in his arms, the kid's backpack hanging from one shoulder. Noah's coloring book was tucked under Daniel's arm like it mattered. Daniel looked at me, waiting. Not assuming. I exhaled. Okay, I said, but if anything feels off, I'm gone. Daniel nodded. Understood. We walked out together into the rain. The street was glossy with water, reflecting streetlights in long golden streaks. My shoes splashed lightly. Cars hissed past. The cold air made my lungs sting. 2 blocks felt longer than it should have. Daniel kept a respectful distance, even on the sidewalk, adjusting his pace so I didn't feel chased. Every so often, he glanced down at Noah to make sure his head was supported. We reached a mid-rise building with a bright lobby and glass doors. Inside, the lighting was clean and white, the kind that made everything look too honest. A security guard sat behind a desk, watching quietly. Cameras in the corners. Good. Daniel pushed the door open with his shoulder and nodded at the guard. Evening. The guard's eyes flicked to Noah, then to me. Evening, he replied, neutral. We stepped in, and the warmth hit my skin like a blanket. A man in a pressed shirt stood behind a reception counter. He looked up, polite smile ready. Mr. Reed, he asked. Daniel nodded. Yes. And this is? The man's eyes went to me, then to my left hand again, like it was a reflex. Claire, breathe. This is Claire, Daniel said, steady. My fiancée. The receptionist's smile sharpened slightly, approval again, like the word changed the math. Great, he said. Ms. Harrington asked me to verify ID and emergency contact details. It'll take 2 minutes. He slid a clipboard across the counter and pointed to a line. Daniel shifted Noah gently so he could sign, then handed the pen back. The receptionist looked at me. And you, Claire, I'll need your ID as well. My heart jumped. Daniel's eyes met mine, calm. No pressure. Just a question in his gaze. Are you still in? I swallowed and pulled my wallet from my bag with fingers that didn't feel like mine. I handed my ID over. The receptionist studied it, then typed something into his computer. Keyboards clicking, the lobby humming, in the glass doors behind us. Rain blurred the outside world into soft streaks. The receptionist glanced up. Emergency contact, he said. You're listed as primary. Is that accurate? Yes, I said quietly. He nodded, then looked at Daniel. We'll do a quick confirmation call. Ms. Harrington's policy. Daniel's throat bobbed. Okay. The receptionist dialed. My phone buzzed in my pocket immediately. Unknown number. I pulled it out, screen glowing against my palm. For a second, my mind went blank again. It felt like stepping onto a ledge. Then I answered. Hello. Hi. The receptionist said, voice echoing slightly through the lobby speakers and my phone at the same time. Just confirming. Are you Claire, emergency contact for Noah Reed? I looked at Daniel. He wasn't begging. He wasn't performing. He was holding his sleeping son and waiting, face pale under the bright lights. Yes, I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. That's me. All right, he replied. Thank you. The call ended. My screen went dark. I exhaled slowly, like I'd been holding my breath since the restaurant. The receptionist smiled again. Perfect. One more thing. Daniel stiffened slightly. The receptionist checked the screen. Then his expression shifted just a fraction. Confusion, maybe. He looked up at Daniel, then at me. This is interesting, he said slowly. My stomach dropped. What? I asked. He tapped the keyboard again, then said carefully, this isn't the first time your name has come up with hers. Daniel's eyes snapped to mine, and in that bright, quiet lobby, I felt the floor tilt under me. The lobby suddenly felt too bright, too clean, like it was exposing things I didn't want exposed. My face, my choices, the tremble in my fingers as I held my phone. This isn't the first time your name has come up with hers. Daniel's eyes locked on mine. His grip on Noah tightened, just enough that I noticed. Noah stayed asleep, cheek pressed into Daniel's shoulder. Unaware he'd become the center of a quiet storm. The receptionist cleared his throat, realizing he'd stepped into something personal. I'm sorry, he said quickly. It's just there was a note in the system. A note? I asked, voice thin. He turned the screen slightly, like he wasn't supposed to but couldn't help himself. I couldn't read everything from where I stood, but I saw my name, Daniel's, and a line that looked like an internal comment. Reference, community partners, verified through Midtown Family Resource Center. My lungs filled and forgot how to empty. Midtown Family Resource Center. I stared at the words like they were a punchline I didn't understand. Then something clicked, slowly, painfully. The volunteer hours I'd done last year. The weekend workshop I'd helped organize. The time I'd stayed late after a session with a parent who couldn't stop shaking. Because no one should have to drive home like that. It wasn't my whole life. It wasn't even a big part of it. But it was real. I looked at Daniel, and for the first time all night, I felt something settle into place. You knew about me from there, I whispered. Daniel's shoulders dropped, like he'd been holding a secret in his chest and had finally gotten too heavy. He nodded once. Not at first, he said quietly. I didn't recognize you from a photo. I recognized your name. My throat tightened. How? He shifted Noah slightly, so his son's head wouldn't slip. His movements were careful, practiced. Then he looked back at me. I went there, he said. A few months ago, when I moved, I didn't know anyone. I didn't know how to do it alone. His voice stayed steady, but I heard the strain under it. They had a list of local resources, people who'd helped, volunteers, contacts. He swallowed. Your name was on a board in the office. Not like a big hero thing. Just Claire Communications, help with the parent workshop. My chest tightened so hard it almost hurt. You saw my name on a board, I said, stunned. And that's why I thought you might be safe, he said. And his eyes softened with something that wasn't manipulation. It was gratitude. Not because you were pretty. Not because you were convenient. Because someone trusted you enough to put your name there. The receptionist shifted awkwardly behind the counter. The security guard pretended to read something on his desk. The lobby hummed with fluorescent quiet. I felt the floor under my feet again. And then, like the universe wanted to test the truth of this moment, the glass doors opened and cold air rushed in. Maya stormed into the lobby, rain on her hair, eyes sharp like she was ready to fight a bear with her bare hands. Claire, she said, breathless. Her gaze snapped to Daniel, then to Noah in his arms, then back to me. You okay? I nodded, but my throat was too tight to speak. Maya stepped closer, lowering her voice. Are you safe? Daniel didn't move. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to explain himself first. He just looked at me and waited. That was the answer in a way. Yes, I said finally. I'm safe. Maya held my gaze for a second longer, searching for cracks. Then she exhaled slowly. Okay, she said. Then tell me what's happening. I looked at Daniel, then at the receptionist. The receptionist cleared his throat again, eager to return to policy. We're finished here, he said quickly. I'll confirm to Ms. Harrington that verification was completed. You'll receive final confirmation tomorrow. Daniel nodded. Thank you. The receptionist gave a polite smile and looked away, like he was relieved not to be part of whatever this was anymore. Daniel turned toward the door, shifting Noah again as they started to leave. And suddenly, panic flickered in my chest. Not because I wanted a fairy tale, but because I realized something. I'd spent the whole evening being measured. By Ethan, by the landlord, by the room. And now here was this man who had made a messy, imperfect choice and still treated me like I had agency. Daniel, I said, stopping him. He froze. Turn back. His eyes were careful. What? He asked softly. I walked closer, heart thumping, and kept my hands at my sides, still holding my boundary. The wife line, I said. You said you hated it. He nodded, jaw tight with shame. I do. Why that line? I asked. Why not just ask for help like a normal person? Daniel stared at the floor for half a beat, then looked up, and his voice dropped into something bitter and honest. Because people don't listen to a woman unless she belongs to someone, he said quietly. They treat her like background. Noise. He swallowed. I watched that guy reject you, and I watched the room keep moving like you didn't matter. My breath caught, and I thought, he continued, eyes steady now, if I said it like that, if I said something loud enough to break the script, then the world would stop ignoring you for 1 second. I blinked hard, emotions rising like water. I didn't want a wife, he said, voice rough. I wanted the world to stop doubting you. Silence pressed in. Maya stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching like she was trying to decide whether she hated him or respected him. I looked at Daniel, really looked. Not for charm, not for red flags Ethan wanted me to see. For truth. He didn't look like a man trying to win. He looked like a man trying to survive without becoming someone he hated. Then Noah stirred. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first. He blinked at the bright lights, then looked at me. For a moment, he just stared, like he was searching for something familiar in a new place. Then he whispered, thick with sleep, "Are we okay?" Daniel's face softened instantly. "Yeah," he murmured. "We're okay." Noah's eyes drifted to me. "Is she coming?" My throat tightened so hard it felt like it might close. Daniel didn't answer for me. He just looked at me, waiting. Again, choice. My stomach flipped. My mind raced through every sensible option. Go home, take a hot shower, delete the app. Let this become a strange story you tell once. But I remembered Ethan's face when he decided I wasn't worth the effort. I remembered how my body had tried to disappear. And I remembered the receptionist screen. My name wasn't invisible everywhere. I took a slow breath. "I'm not coming with you," I said gently to Noah and saw his face fall a little. "Not tonight." Noah's mouth trembled, but he didn't cry. He just nodded, like he was learning disappointment early. Then I added carefully, "But I can walk you to the door." Daniel's shoulders loosened, just slightly. "Okay," he said. We stepped outside into the rain. The street was quieter now. The lobby's brightness faded behind us, replaced by wet pavement and soft streetlight glow. Rain fell in thin, steady lines. Cars passed with gentle hissing tires. The cold air made our breath visible for a second, then disappear. Daniel held Noah close. Noah's head rested on his shoulder again, eyes half closed, comforted by the rhythm of his father's steps. We reached the edge of the sidewalk under the awning. Daniel paused. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to say 1,000 things and didn't trust any of them to be clean enough. "So," he said softly, "you can still walk away. I won't be offended. I won't text you. I won't." "I know," I interrupted. My voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. "You've made that clear." He nodded, lips pressing together. I glanced at Noah. His small hand reached out again, not for my sleeve this time, but toward the air between us, then stopped, as if he remembered he wasn't supposed to. My chest tightened. I crouched slightly so I was closer to his level, still keeping my space, and said softly, "You did great tonight." Noah blinked, then whispered, "You're kind." The word hit me in a new way, not a label that made me easy to leave. A choice, a strength. I stood again, eyes burning. Daniel looked at me, rain catching on his lashes, the city reflecting in his tired eyes. He cleared his throat. "Claire," he said, and the way he said my name felt different now. Less like a tool, more like a person. "Yes?" I asked. He hesitated, then asked the smallest thing, the most honest thing. "Can I take you out?" He said softly. "This time for real?" The rain filled the silence. The streetlights blurred into warm halos behind him. My heartbeat slowed, then steadied. I didn't say yes like a movie. I didn't say no like fear. I said the truth. "Not tomorrow," I said, a small smile touching my mouth despite everything. "But soon, and you're not allowed to start with a proposal." Daniel let out a breath that sounded like relief, like laughter trapped behind it. "Deal," he said. Noah mumbled something sleepy, already drifting again. Maya stood under the awning a few steps away, watching with narrowed eyes. But she didn't pull me back. She just gave me a look that said, "I'm here. I'm watching. Don't disappear." Daniel nodded once, respectful, then turned to go. As he walked away down the wet sidewalk, the city swallowed him slowly, one streetlight at a time, until he was just a silhouette holding a child. And I stood there, rain misting my coat, feeling the strange quiet after a storm, because the rejection still happened. The embarrassment still happened, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like it defined me. I felt seen, and that's what the quiet had meant all along.
If this story stayed with you, the next one is already on your screen. Click to keep watching and subscribe for more real stories like this.